Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I don't know if anybody's going to be watching, but I'm still going to be messing with things around here. So, how's everybody's weekend been going? Mine, I've went to Montreal yesterday. Had a couple of fun BattleTech event going on. It wasn't a great time. A lot of people were already like planned stuff. So you brought your army and you were supposed to play, but a lot of people already had their stuff out for playing with other people. And whoever they had really trying to teach the game wasn't the best people around. Not to be mean to them. I mean, it's not really their fault, but we have to live with who they brought there. So today's creative, we're going to be messing around with a little bit of opening the wrong thing here. Going to be messing around with a bit of alternate history with the GI Joe Real Intersphere era. We might be chatting as well, depending on what's going on. Do have a lot of things open all over the place, so it's a little bit weird on my computer. I was messing with lists because we had me and the kids. We basically drafted out of salvage boxes that I bought from CGL. Drafted 3 lances, basically one for each of my kids. Well, older kids. My daughter's a bit young. So messed around here. Panther 2K, Fenris D, Marauder 2R, and a Kodiak for my youngest son. 7,123 points. So the second list I made with the Fancy Raven, a Blackhawk, a Thor, and a Victor comes to 7,559 points. So it's a bit higher. Now I have to mess with the list for me. And what I got was, the leftovers. I could have gone with a Mongoose rather than a Koshi, but I've got a Mist Lynx. So I'll go with that. What kind of Mist Lynx do I want to bring? Mist Lynx are not fantastic. I'm not a huge fan of it. The design's okay, but the mech itself is rather weak, to be honest. I'm gonna go and reshare the link to the stream on Twix. Not sure if anybody's I could be playing what's the name of it? Nightingale. We've got that in the Opera as well. It's a fun game, but all right, I just reshared it. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that Mist Lynx. Prime is okay, I guess. This one has APODs, not very useful. 2 ER medium lasers, 2 SRM6, and an ER small. That's pretty decent. This one here's got a ER large laser, an ER medium laser, and an AMS, and an ECM. Okay, ooh, Ultra EC2. That's fantastically bad. 3 EV mediums and 4 EV smalls on a targeting computer. That's simply overkill. That might be actually fun to play. Yeah, I'll go with that. The F configuration. So let's go here. Koshi standard. That's one of those weird mechs where they made a standard as well. So Mist Lynx F. Where is it? It's there. F. I've got a Shadow Cat. I don't think there's a whole lot of configs on the Shadow Cat, or is it even a Omni? Yeah, Shadow Cat's an Omni. It's one of those mechs that I know exists, but I only really ever use the primary configuration because it's a decent enough fit. ER medium, ER large lasers, Streak SRM6, meh. LRM 15, ATM 6. ER large laser, medium pulse lasers, machine gun, ER small laser. That's a whole lot of guns for not much. I'll just go with a prime. Why not? Got no reason not to. Shadowcat prime. Then a L-bringer, which is always a treat to use. And a Cyclops. I could go with the Cyclops C, but that would be very expensive. Cyclops C is 2,200. How much would that be? Yeah, I'd be at 8,000. I'd be way over what the kids have. I'll go with the good one. The good one is the 10Q. So about the same range as the kids have. I was thinking I'd be a lot lower, actually, but surprisingly, I'm not. Well, it didn't print. Okay, that's what you need to do. I messed it up. So I go here. I rename my force. I mean, outside of, well, the Cyclops, I haven't really played a whole lot in my life, I'll be honest. I did make a video on it, but it's not a mech that I've run a ton of times. Hellbringer, I've run it a ton of times as a target when I was playing with friends back in the days. It was a mech that people loved blowing up. It's pretty easy to blow up, and it's risky if you don't shoot at it. Shadowcat, like I said, I played the Prime version quite a bit, especially in video games, actually. And the Mistlinks is in not many video games, and it's a decent mech, but it's one I've played just like once or twice. All right. See, I don't see anybody rolling in. Oh well. Or maybe it's StreamYard being StreamYards. You never know. As the private chat window, that's the regular chat window. That's the one I want. All righty. So what did we mess with recently? Didn't do a creative stream last week because I had a few different things going on. See, my collection of mechs has been growing because I've been using a lot of those to do things. This is coming up on Wednesday, the Legacy. Put some color on it myself. It's not that great looking, but it's cool. I like those colors. And Monday, we've got the Nova as the mech of the week, I guess. So we have a lot of little things going on. Friday, I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to be dropping as a video. It's a odd situation. I might record something during the week and do the presentation during the week, or I've got something up for a Fort Succession or Battle Mechs, which is what might be fun to do. I'm thinking. Doesn't look like a terrible series. So, what do we do today? What would we create? I mean, last week I did post quite a bit on this. And this week I've worked a little bit on it. I haven't had as much time. I spent a lot of time this week. Sorry, I was looking for something. I spent a lot of time this week at the hospital with the kids. So it wasn't super pleasant. But one thing I did a lot of was reading the various GI Joe RPG books. And I'll be honest, I do like it quite a lot. Just because of not because of just of the setting. You often enough when I read an RPG, I like the setting a whole lot. Then I start looking at the rules and they're kind of iffy, or there's all sorts of things going on, or the rules are, I remember reading Anima back in the days, and the setting was all over the place. The rules were all over the place as well, but all of it looked pretty cool. We tried playing it and it was unplayable. Vampire has that bit of an issue as well. I mean, the setting's pretty cool and there's concepts that are cool, and then you start playing it and it's almost unplayable. So there's too many things really going on here to be really interesting. I'm positioning some mechs in front of me. Always have. Here, so they don't take up all the room. It's the 4 lances we just built. I mean, that could be a company. Wouldn't be a very, well, it'd be an okay one, but oh well. So what do we have done here with GI Joe? The game itself, in essence, the Essence 20, as it's called, is a pretty nice system overall. I like how it flows and how it goes. I would have preferred, seriously, 2 D10s rather than a D20 for the base roll, just because a D20 is 100% random. It's 5% chance of rolling every single thing, while 2 D10s would be a bell curve, which in my opinion is always better. Of course, if we were to do that in the game, it would change the probabilities. It would change how a lot of stuff works. It's always, I mean, you can't change a game that easily, especially not that one. The rest of the way the system works for Essence 20, basically you roll your D20 against a target. It's a very basic thing that we're used to doing nowadays. But the other bits of it that are actually quite fun are that when you have skills, you add a dice rather than adding a fixed number. Hey, David, how are you doing? So like I said here, for Essence 20, you roll a D20 plus a dice depending on your skill level. So you won't have incredibly inflated target numbers. And the more skilled your character is, the more chances you're going to be able to roll high, but you're still going to have a somewhat of a bell curve somewhere. The skill level basically go untrained, D2, D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, which is a bit weird, but it does give a curve of increase to your skills. And when you're attacking something, usually it's going to be D20 plus your dice, your skill dice, depending on what you're shooting with or doing melee with or driving with, versus a target number based on your target's base stat plus an armor if they have one. It's a fairly straightforward system. The elt is also not super inflated. Most things do 1 or 2 damage on average. There's weird things that do a whole lot more. I mean, if you get shot by a battleship cannon, it's going to hurt a lot more. But I mean, it's GI Joe in the end. You might be able to dodge it. And it's pretty nice there. When you do combat, you do lose a couple elt points, and when you're at 0, well, you're out of the fight, but that doesn't mean you're dead, which kind of works normally if you're speaking GI Joe there. So it's a very decent system, and I like that it's not as lethal as a lot of other newer system that I've seen, but it's not as soaky as D20 ends up being most of the time. D20 is, I think, it's not bad. I mean, I love playing Pathfinder. I don't like 5th edition. I'm one of those weird guys who doesn't like 5th edition. I don't like 2nd edition Pathfinder. Oh, baseline Pathfinder is my thing, but I do see the big problems with it, with HP inflation and all the other math that you need to do with it. I think a flatter system like Essence 20 is a better system for more narrative games a little bit. And I think what I want to actually do is do this hybrid campaign, GI Joe, a real Innisphere hero, actually run a campaign of that at some point. Not just as a Battletech campaign, but as a GI Joe campaign with actual battle mech fights being run in the Battletech system. As well, GI Joe has a somewhat solid vehicle system. I mean, the joke here is to do an actual full-on crossover between two settings, and it somewhat works in the end. Um, why not use the actual Time of War? Well, Time of War is a fun RPG system, but it's fairly complex. A lot of people can't really grasp it easily. And the other bit that's annoying, like I said earlier, it's actually very lethal. Dying is going to happen quite a bit in Time of War, while in GI Joe, it's not meant to happen. I mean, unless you play a high lethality game, they do say that in the rule book that there's rules for that, but the base rules are you beat Commander Cobra and he runs away. That's how it works. And that's how people should be expecting these games to work. So I did start on a few things. The main thing here, usually when I do those alternate history settings, a lot of times you'll have me say, well, there's a historical breakpoint. In this case, I mean, it's GI Joe in Battletech. So is there really a breakpoint historically? I had to put my foot down, and what I did is pre-Civil War for the FedCom Civil War, really around 3056 or 58, right before Melissa Steiner gets assassinated by her daughter, Katrin. Well, what happens is Katrin plot is stopped by the Joes, and Katrin Steiner becomes Baroness. So, and I've started doing that here, and I've started a lot of the Cobra characters, not a lot, but a certain number of the Cobra characters are actually in-universe characters that are part of Cobra or becoming Cobra, while the rest is new characters being introduced to kind of work. So it kind of works out fairly well there. There's going to be a few other historical breakpoints here or there. Battle of Tukayid, well, the GI Joes are going to be at the Battle of Tukayid, but fighting Cobra and not fighting the clans or Comstar. Things like that. Just the characters are there, and the characters are acting to do various things to save people. Because that's the big role and a big job of the Joes. It's really to save people from terrorist organization Cobra. I've been reading through a lot of the GI Joe early comics right now. So some of the characters I'm introducing are from those early comics, not because they're not in the cartoon or whatever. I mean, some of them are just interesting to put in. There's a few that I've added as well from other sources, including Bamaran from French bande dessinée, Grifter from Wildcats. There's going to be a few things. I mean, I'm at the point where I just throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. So there's quite a few things that I'm doing. There's not really that much depth in the timeline, unlike what I've done with the other settings. I haven't thought that through yet. I'm really going through with characters, factions, and custom battle mechs, because if there's something that's fun with GI Joe, it's all those funky equipment. So I have got a bunch of custom battle mech, custom vehicles, things to play with, because that's really what both Battletech and GI Joe is all about, is having your toys and playing with them. So that's part of the pleasure here. As far as rules go, a lot of Essence 20 works. Well, not a lot of it, but there is a whole section that's about story points. Story points are basically that narrative resource that players and game masters can use to move the story along or make changes to the story. Here, it's more used like the old Edge system in Age of War, or the, what was it called? Can't remember what it was called in Warhammer Fantasy and the old Warhammer 40K RPG system, there was that one trade that each character had where you gave you rerolls and stuff like that if you spent resources from it. I think it was Destiny points back in the days of what was it? Was that Gloranta? Something like that. I mean, some people might be old enough to remember that. I'm sort of in between, being born in 84. There's some systems I know, some systems I don't. The GI Joe rule book itself is $38 as a PDF. It's about $55 as a paper copy. So it's not the cheapest book around. It's not the best looking book around either. I'll be honest. The art in it is okay, but it could have been a little bit better. Whoever they hired for it, it works, but there's better GI Joe artists out there that exist. I follow one on Twitter, and he's really, really good. So I have to be a little bit careful here. One thing that's fun about the Essence 20 system, yes, it actually is one of those things that work with other systems. So GI Joe can work with Transformers, can work with Power Rangers, and technically work with My Little Pony. Of course, if you're doing a GI Joe X My Little Pony campaign, call me. I want to see what that looks like. GI Joe Power Rangers makes sense. GI Joe Transformers, I'm reading the comic right now. It's actually not that good. I think it dates from 1987. And it has some major issues in terms of pacing and in terms of character setting. But yes, anything actually mixed with My Little Pony probably would be the weirdest thing around. I do know there's bronies out there. My kids actually like My Little Pony. When my son really like it, I personally have no problem with it. I'm actually quite enjoyed it, especially the earlier seasons, because it actually works as a cartoon, unlike a lot of stuff that's coming out now, surprisingly enough. So for the role-playing game right now for GI Joe, there's not that many books out. There's the base book, the Cobra book. There's a faction book. There's I've seen a GM screen with an adventure, not worth $38 if you ask me. And maybe there'll be more books coming up later. But I mean, it's a licensed system. So the big problem with any licensed system like this is that if they lose the license, the books are going to start being unavailable. So if you even buy the PDF, make sure you back it up not only on your computer, but back it up online somewhere so you can recover your book if it disappears from existence. 4 story points. Normally in the regular game, you get a story point per character for the game. And rather than being per character, like each character has a set number of story points, it's for the entire party. The game master also gets a number of story points equal to the number of player, and they can the game master recovers points in between scenes, and the players can do a variety of things to regain points. If you were to use story points in Battletech matchups, how would it work? Well, the way I really am looking at it here, you have 1 story point per named character and 1 story point for each full 3 green shirt or vipers, basically your average GI Joe grunt or your average Cobra grunt. So player 1 brings Duke and Stalker on a mission, and Destro and 3 mech vipers are fighting them. Both sides get 2 story points, 1 for Duke, 1 for Stalker, 1 for Destro, and 1 for all 3 mech vipers. Example 2, Flint, Lady J, Bob Moran, and Grifter are fighting Copperhead and 2 lances of Battle Mech. The Joes get 4 story points because there's 4 named characters. And Copperhead, or the player with the Cobra player, gets 3 story points. 1 for Copperhead and 2 for 7 generic pilots. So first 3, second 3, and you don't get 1 for that extra 1 guy. Allows you to at least get some points for those generic characters that you might end up having to fill up your lineup. because you do have to fill up your lineup every once in a while in these kinds of adventures. So that's a good way to do it. What can you do with story points? We'll see that later. How can you gain them back? Every failed piloting skill check by a named character gives you back a story point. Since in the original, in the book itself, if you have someone that fails or critically fails a check, you gain a story point. That's pretty much the same in BattleTech. If you fail a piloting skill roll, your mech is down. You'll need to get back up. That's a good reason to give someone a story point. Eliminating an enemy off the board, either you destroy them, force them to retreat, or they're no longer a threat. This would give you a story point as well. Same with completing an objective. If it's player versus player, both of them follow the same rules. If there's a game master, if you manage to have the players fail an objective, you gain a story point. What can you use your story points? I've got some generic reasons here you'd be using your story points, and we'd have a few other ones. Reroll any one dice. That's the first one. So you roll a 1 and a 2 on your second consciousness check, so you're going to fall unconscious. You spend a story point to reroll the dice with the 1, and you get a 5, which means you pass your consciousness check. Simple enough. I mean, and you can use it at any time. Consciousness check, piloting skill rolls. After the roll, reroll one of the 2 dices. Increase the difficulty to hit your unit by 2 until the end of the round for all incoming attacks. That also goes with what I would like to call that rule if I was to put a full thing on it. It would be, why do they keep missing people? You have to remember that in GI Joe, people seem to always miss until they have to hit, and then they hit, and you know how it works in that kind of show. Adding 2 to the difficulty to hit to something in BattleTech is fairly massive. It's like increasing the range band by 1, etc. I mean, most normal attacks go from hitting on a 7 or an 8. With adding a 2 to that, it goes to hitting a 9. It gets very difficult on 2 dices to do. Another thing is add any 2 to any 1 dice roll to activate equipment or on a piloting skill roll. Someone fails a piloting skill roll. They rolled a 5. They need a 7. They spend a story point. It goes over the target. Equipment, what I mean by that is in Battletech, there's a lot of equipment like the mask, the supercharger, the risk coolant system, where if you activate it multiple turns in a row, it starts having chances of not working and actually causing damage to your unit. You rolled a 7 on your round 4 activation of a mask. That means that it would damage your actuators. You spend a story point, it turns into a 9, you're good to go. You have to remember, especially if you're doing an actual RPG thing, story points are shared by the entire team. So you can't just og off all the story points, or someone's going to get mad at you at some point. Last basic thing you can do with a story point would be to add 3 to any cluster roll. So if you shoot an LRM 20, you roll your it, you roll again to know how many missiles of it. After that roll is done, you add 3 to it. After you've added your Artemis or Narc or whatever. So it makes it easier for you to do more damage with those cluster weapons if you're willing to do the trade of spending a story point. Other things, I should just go and include them in the main thing, but I'm just going to do a few things here. Just going to open a few pages. Spending points for critical hits. If you spend a story point when there's critical hit chances, basically. Before the attack rolls are made by your opponent, you spend 1 story point, and until the end of the attack phase by that particular unit, all critical rolls are at -3. So you get attacked by an annihilator with 4 cluster LB10X and your armor is already all messed up. You take this option, you've got less chances of being hit by criticals. When you actually take a critical hit, you can spend 1 story point to ignore the critical hit, meaning that you're supposed to get an engine hit. You can't afford to take an engine hit. You take that story point and hope for the best. Cockpit hits and head blown off, destroy the mech, but the pilot automatically is safe and gives a story point to the opposing group in that case. That's why you always see the Joes or Cobra eject from whatever vehicle they are in. Even the grunts in the end also do it. So even really bad stuff like that, we're going to go with low lethality for everything. Cockpit hit, head blown off, things like this, you still survive. But it trades by giving points to your opponent. The other bit here with story points. Why are they not running out of ammo? Well, basically, if you are out of ammo, you can spend 1 story point to get 1 ton worth of ammo back at the end of the turn. It's just, yes, it doesn't work like that in real life. Yes, it doesn't work like that in Battletech normally. But it's a game. It's GI Joe. It's meant to go over the top. Plot reasons being plot reasons. You spend your story point. You get a ton of ammo back, and you're still in the fight because your AC-20 only had 2 tons of ammo because you're in Hunchback. Well, you get that ammo back. Here's a rule thing or a discussion thing that I put up for travel times. Battletech is a very, very gritty and a very, very, they try to make it as realistic as possible for a lot of things, weirdly enough. One of the thing is in Battletech that every space travel is all calculated. You've actually got maps, especially if you've bought the more recent books, with how long it takes for a jump ship to recharge at each different nadir jump points. So it's fun to see how that works, and it's great for if you're doing that really realistic and really serious campaign. But it's not that great if you're trying to do a narrative campaign or a very Saturday morning cartoon, Saturday morning story kind of things. Really, jumping and traveling is just implied in these kinds of stories. I just remember we rewatched The Pyramid of Darkness with the kids the other day. I mean, they went from the middle of the Pacific Ocean to all sorts of places across the world in a matter of minutes because that's how it works in GI Joe. Even if you're going there by boat, it's going to take just a few minutes. You're only really going to have to mess with travel time if there's story reasons for you to mess with travel time. It's just how it is. It's the best way to represent this kind of storytelling. Of course, it's going to be your game. If you're the one taking in what I'm writing here and starting to work on it, you do you. But my idea here is really to go with, well, yes, we're still using jump ship. Yes, we're still moving around in that particular way, but we're not going to do it in that really gritty and nitpicky way that Battletech is known for. I might need to put some backlinks somewhere. It's a bit annoying to always have to go to the front page. I'm not a completely used to fandom yet. I'm getting better at least formatting things, but it's not always the easiest. So as far as characters go, I haven't gone through all the Joes and all the Cobra characters and all the other characters I would like to add. because there would be quite a few, obviously. For now, as far as faction goes, I'm writing down different factions. One thing I want to change is Clan Mongoose. Rather than being exterminated, they had to go into hiding because Cobra controls all the snake clans in the clans. Cloud Cobra, Clan Star Adder. What's the other one? Wow, I am completely lost here for a second. I'll go here because I have a list in the other one here. Cloud Cobra obviously is your main Cobra clan for obvious reasons. Clan Star Adder, Clan Steel Viper. So you've got 3 clans that are Cobra controlled. So they're the clan bad guys are your Cloud Cobra, Steel Viper, and Star Adder. Clan Mongoose was abjured or exterminated in name only. They left the main clan Old World to fight Cobra. So they still exist. They're still around. They're infiltrating the different other clans, putting their own people here and there to fight Cobra when they can. And now that they know that GI Joe is there, well, they're openly allying with our Joes. Cobra's really split into 2, with the Cobra members that are a part of the clan and the regular Cobra that are part of the inner sphere. With the leader of the Cobra forces for the clan being good old Serpentor Kesuk, because that's a clan Cloud Cobra blood name. Aliases Stefan Amaris II, Khan of Khans. He really thinks he's going to be the biggest, baddest clan leader of all time. That goes with the whole thing. And our good friend Dr. Mindbender is the one that created him, using the mix of all the greatest conqueror of all time, including good old Stefan Amaris, the ultimate bad guy in the Battletech universe. The reason for the season, kind of a way. Stefan Amaris caused the fall of the Star League by killing the First Lord and destroying the entire Cameron bloodline. He's a really, really nasty dude. So he works perfectly well to be one of the blood genitor of Serpentor, the leader of our clan Cobra units. He would be piloting a Blood Asp, which is a classic clan battle mech, very popular. People really like it, and I do as well. It's a fun machine. As a custom, this one's not that custom. It's just a custom config on it with AG 30s, ER medium lasers, Watchdog CEWS. So you've got electronic warfare, and most Cobra units will have improved C3 computers, because Cobra basically replaces the Word of Blake Jihad and Word of Blake units. So that's going to be their trademark. So as Joe characters fight Cobra characters, you have to find ways of disrupting the C3 computer network, or taking things out as quickly as possible to not be penalized by it. The regular Blood Asp uses Gauss rifles rather than AG 30s. This gives them more firepower, but less chances of doing good damage with it. Gauss gives 15-1 it. AG 30s give spread out damage like a LRM. So it's a different setup. And with a C3I computer, well, it's probably going to be pretty nasty. So Serpentor was our leader for the clans. So obviously, Cobra Commander is our leader for the Inner Sphere Cobras, who have decided would be Thomas Merrick. We actually have his name here and not just have him be a used car salesman like in the IDW silly timeline. Here we have Thomas Merrick, who would technically be the master and the leader of the Word of Blake Jihad. Now he's just the Cobra leader. It's the actual Thomas Merrick, not his clone slash buddy double. And he's got connections in Comstar. He's got connection in the Free Worlds League. He's got a very big power base. He does like the normal Cobra commander does, which is recruit disillusioned and disenfranchised people into his organization. And in Battletech, it's pretty easy. Every dispossessed battle mech, if someone, mech warrior, if someone was to offer you a battle mech, if you work for them, often enough you do it just thinking you're doing mercenary work, and then you learn about Cobra and you kind of get into it. Have pilot and Archangel. Of course, they technically wouldn't be built at the time of the story, but that doesn't matter. We're playing by GI Joe rules here. Archangel being the 100-ton Omni-Mech from the Word of Blake. This one here being an half-decent machine. The problem is the regular Archangel and Friends are not that great machines, I would say. But is there a way for me to get full screen? Yeah. Watchdog CWS, plasma rifle, improved C3, a pair of ATM3s, a retractable blade, an ERPPC, and a targeting computer. It's not very good. I'll be honest with you guys. It's not the best design I've ever built. ATM trees are tiny, tiny little missile launchers. They work. You do have an EDCAP weapon with that ERPPC. A plasma rifle is decent enough for damage and eat. With a C3I, it's half decent. Retractable blades are odd, but they kind of work as well. So it's not a terrible mech, but probably not one that I would call optimized in any way, shape, or form. I'm still looking for better pictures for some of the things. Well, that one here for Cobra Commander quite works. This one here for Thomas Merrick quite works. It's pretty much the accurate one for the time as well. Baroness, I went with Baroness actually being an alter ego for Katrin Steiner, who's another horrible human being in Battletech, to be honest. What allows her to go into full Baroness mode is the fact that she's a Cobra La hybrid. She gets the treatment and becomes an hybrid. And with that, she's able to change her hair color and her eye color at will, basically. My date of birth here is should be 3026 and not 3062. So basically, she tries to kill her mother, as was done in the setting, to try to. She kills her in the original setting. She kills her mother to frame her brother through her uncle to get the crown. It's extremely convoluted. It's not a bad idea, and it kind of works, and kind of fucks things over for a whole lot of people. But here, the assassination attempt fails because the Joes and Bob Moran saves Melissa Steiner. Katrin Steiner has to flee the Federated Commonwealth for feel of her life. She goes to the Free Worlds League, which is not in the best term with the Federated Commonwealth at the time. And she meets with Thomas Merrick, who introduces her to Cobra and gives her the full hybridization process to allow her to go between her normal form and her alter ego. So it gives us a little bit more Battletech lore in our GI Joe setting. Probably close out of that. Destro is Destro. Nothing special about him. A big boss of our Mars Military Armament Research Syndicate company. That is a horrible group of people, as usual. They sell money to just about everybody. And he's happy to help and serve Cobra. Piloting a custom Marauder. Nothing too special on that custom Marauder. Large pulse lasers, medium pulse lasers in the arm pods is basically a Marek version of the 3M. Replace the LB10X or LB5X with an AG 40 and a small pulse laser in the center torso for the fun of it. Destro doesn't use a C3I computer because he's too honorable for it, or he's too fancy for it. The real reason is because I wasn't able to fit one in. I was messing around with the numbers, started building the mech, and I looked at the end and I was like, well, I probably should have put that C3I in, and I just didn't know where I was going to put it. For our Cobras, Zartan, another fairly popular one. Aliases, too many to count. Place, date of birth unknown, place of birth unknown. Not quite sure what he is. Going more with the mutant / weird supernatural version of Zartan than the one we saw like in the movie, which was okay, but not great. Zartan is a pirate that decided to betray the Oberon Confederation, moves all the way to the Rimward Periphery instead, starts messing with everybody around there. Still not too happy about what he's doing, decides to go mercenary. The problem is, him and his dreadnoughts, not very popular with the MRB, but someone does want to hire him, and it's Cobra Commander. So it does give us that old dreadnought kind of situation. Fairly minor group here, but one battle mech regiment word of equipment. They have a Vincent class corvette as a warship. Probably going to have more warships. It's just fun to have big ships and people running around here. So we have something here with our Dreadnoughts, which is the plausible deniability asset for Cobra and Mars. You send the Dreadnoughts when you want stuff done, but you don't want to say it's you. Zartan would pilot a fairly average mech, a Griffin. But here, of course, I went with something relatively fancy, just went with something a little bit different. Once again, not super optimized, but fun anyways. With a chameleon LPS, better than stealth armor, in my opinion. So it's one of those things that's pretty fun to use. A PPC capacitor equipped stun those PPC. 2 flamers, a mech mortar rather than actual missiles, because it's just fun to try different weapons, and a partial wing. So you have a fairly jumpy Griffin 587, which works with Zartan's biker origin and the whole thing. I do have some Dreadnoughts machines as well. A Dreadnoughts Phoenix Hawk and a Dreadnoughts Stinger. Stinger being nothing super fancy, but having actuator enhancements to help the pilots do better, even though they might not be the best pilots. Well, they've got those AES to help them. Same thing with the Dreadnoughts Phoenix Hawk. They have a partial wing. Both models have partial wings as well to help them move around. The Dreadnoughts Phoenix Hawk has a stun those PPC on an AES, medium lasers, machine guns. It's pretty much a regular Phoenix Hawk, but with a partial wing and a stun those PPC instead of the large laser. Works fairly well, in my opinion. Probably be a pretty decent mech. But of course, it uses clan equipment for some of the stuff, so it wouldn't be 100% legal in normal games. But that's just how we roll here when we're creating equipment like this. Every mech that has the name Cobra or a name of a snake, I'm going to try to put in as a Cobra mech. I've done some of the vehicles as well. No, that's the bats. Done some of the vehicles as well. Mulder MBT, the APC, the Cobra IS. I've done those as well. Give us a little bit of weight here. For our Joes, I've gotten quite a few at this point. Ock, Duke, Flint, Rock and Roll, which is one of my favorite because he's really, really good in the video games. That's why I kind of like him. Stalker, which I really like from the comics. Lady J, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, Keel Hall, Ledger, Boat Admiral. I had a little bit of fun here with Keel Hall being a Clan Mongoose admiral that joins the Joe after they start working together, and they steal the Enterprise, which is a ship that technically never worked in the Battletech universe, but we're gonna make it work here. It was supposed to be a ship, a carrier, so it works perfectly well for the USS Flag. And he's the very, very competent, very, very good admiral. While Ledger, which is the one that we actually saw in the cartoon, rather than Keel Hall, which was not in the cartoon. Ledger is actually one of those Lyran social general, basically a guy that would be a paper pusher more than an officer. But that's actually his skill in this particular case. You have to remember that most officers don't know anything about real space battles in Battletech, especially in that particular era, because nobody's got warships. Battles are going to be between starfighters or between dropships, and even then, you don't want to risk a dropship doing that most of the time. So Ledger is not supposed to be that great commander, but he's got a talent, and his talent is to actually be able to move things. He knows every company in the inner sphere and the periphery. He knows every transport ship. He knows every little commander that needs to be bribed to be able to go through a border. He knows exactly what he needs to do. During the clan invasion as well, when they strike in the clan occupation zone, him and a bunch of Joes steal an Aegis class heavy cruiser from Clan Cloud Cobra, and they fix it up and have their an Aegis class heavy cruiser, the USS Liberty. He had a Star-Lord class jump ship before that he doesn't own, but he controls it. And of course, he's played by Jeff Bridges, because that's definitely Jeff Bridges right there. Hello, Mr. Sam Rogers from Australia. Don't know when you're catching this, if you're watching from the start or if you're watching from where I'm at. We're just discussing GI Joe characters here. So for the main Joes at the moment, I've got, starting from Ock, which was very important in the comics, but not super important in the cartoon, which is a bit funny when you think about it, but still. Didn't go any very fancy with Ock. Served in the War of 39. Was decided to form a crack team of anti-terrorists by the special forces in inner sphere space. So by Loki and Mio from Federated Commonwealths. And he decides to be finding the threats from Cobra. He helps out the first Somerset Strikers, are from the original cartoon. Because that helps out here, gives you a bit of background on what they do during the clan invasion. And they rescue a bunch of people in the occupation zone, and they fight Cobra. Gave him a classic command mech, the Archer. Works really well. played around with a few things here, made it with ATMs rather than with LRM 20s. It's actually, I think it's a 2W that I took as the base and modified it to fit the needs here. Not a whole lot of Streak SRM5, SRM4 ammo, but should be enough for what is needed. So our, the original main character, before he was, I've seen Flint more often in rewatching recent cartoons. I'd have to check the actual changes here. So we've got Duke, who served in the American militia. Both Duke and Flint come from the Free Worlds League. I'm not sure why I rolled it that way, but I just did. Duke was an infantry commander, steals a Thunderbolt, and he knows instinctively how to pilot it because, it's GI Joe, it's how it works. And he fights Cobra, and he gets recruited into the Joes. After that, works pretty well. Probably some of the best stats in Battletech. Kind of works for his skill. And pilots a Thunderbolt called John Wayne. I'm trying to have fun with that as well. Unlike most unit, the John Wayne just uses standard inner sphere equipment rather than any of them fancy clan gear, because Duke is a little bit more patriotic, let's say. It might be changed in the future. It's one of those things, sometimes you change mech in the middle of a series. That's how it works. So a pretty straightforward Thunderbolt with jump jets, a bit more armor. Nothing super special. Flint, our other main character, let's face it. I went with there's one timeline where he actually marries Lady J and has a kid. So I went with that here. Another Free World League citizen who come from a good family, went to the actual fancy military school. Everything in his life was fast-tracked in the right direction until his life hit a snag when a group of Cobra officers were trying to execute a false flag attack where he was serving, and that's where he meets with the Joes and Lady J. Fairly simple kind of things there. And they get married after the Battle of Tukayid, where they fight Cobra. Called his mech went with a Black Knight, which is another kind of trooper mech, a bit like Duke, but Feanor, the Tolkien Prince of the Elves, who kind of went bad, just to have fun once again, goes with his background as a literature student. A bit of a configuration mix, some clan equipment, some inner sphere equipment, medium laser, regular medium lasers, large pulse lasers, and ERPPC are clan based. It kind of works here. Flint is a little bit worse than Duke at piloting gunnery, but that kind of goes with it. Lady J, we just talked about her. Dragonist Combine, Infiltration, and Special Forces officer that joins the Joe after, once again, she was fighting against Cobra. The ISF strikes the Cobra headquarters at the same time as a GI Joe team. No, she rescues a group of GI Joe officers that were captured by the enemy. And General Hawk tries to recruit as many people as possible from the team that rescued them. And Theodore Kurita lets them do it because he wants to fight Cobra as well. Lady J is commander of the Tiger Force, which is a sub-faction within GI Joe. They've done a bunch of toys for it. There were a few cartoon episodes about them. Nothing super fancy. It's one of those like detachment kind of bonus. All your mechs get distracting. You get extra bonuses for hiding in the woods. Things like that. I'm going to try to work that kind of thing into a lot of things in general. Snake Eyes, because he's probably the most popular character, even though he's not my favorite character in GI Joe. He's fairly popular. Made him as weird and as confidential as possible. Also, the best pilot possible. Everything's confidential in the stats. Have a good time grabbing your groceries. I'm probably just going to wrap it up at this point. Both him and Storm Shadow pilot a custom mech. The final image is not finalized here. I'll probably get someone to make it for me. Made a custom mech with a hatchet that will replace it with a katana, but it doesn't really matter. A fast 65 tonner with some Streakus RM6, small pulse laser, Watchdog CWS, and medium pulse laser. So it's not a very hard hitting machine, but it's really fast, really mobile. And at 65 ton, you can head cap with that hatchet, and you've got triple strength myomer as well. So if you really want to deal a lot of damage once your heat starts piling up, you're going to be able to destroy people real quick. So Snake Eyes got his own thing going. One of the characters that I've had to play with a bit, Scarlet. What I went with here, one of the main characters, Ants Davion, had a clone made of him, basically. And his clone is still alive and well in the story. I'm not quite sure if they're ever going to reference him ever again. But here I went that Scarlet's dad is actually Ants Davion's clone. So she's technically a Steiner Davion in a very weird way. She's got very weird attributes as well at the same time, but it also explains why she's so good at everything. I mean, the Davion bloodline is pretty darn good. So it gives us another character kind of linked to that, to the Baroness, and it gives us a bit of a link to the main plot. Went with a Battle Master for her. Basically, it's a gift from Ants Davion. A Battle Master with a hatchet. So it works pretty well. A little bit less direct firepower, but with an hatchet on an 85 tonner, it works really well. So I've gone through a few things that I've done. I'm going to keep working on boat rules, setting different mechs, things like that over the course of this week, at least. I'm going to try to have, once again, another one of those creative stream pretty much every weekend. So we have some things to talk about and some fun, just discussing different things. Like I said, this week we've got 3 drops. Tomorrow is going to be the Nova. On Wednesday, we have the Legacy, which is a fairly short video on a Word of Blake mech. And on Friday, we're going to have, I'm not sure what at this point, really depends on what comes up. So I hope everybody has a very nice rest of your evening. I will see you all later. And if you want to mess with things, just DM me on Twitter. If you want to join in the fun and create alternate history settings, just tell me. And come to the wiki and work on things that you want. Post things, and we'll have fun, all of us together. I hope you have a nice day. Bye-bye.